Support for this episode is provided by Pennsylvania College of Art and Design and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Lancast. I'm David Moulton. Joining us this episode is comedian Michael Malone. During the show, Michael gives us a little bit of a look behind the scenes as to what it's like to start out in the comedy business.
The comedian lifestyle that you're exposed to is the tour buses and the sold-out arenas, and and that's about 1% of the actual job there. It's usually you're sleeping in your car in a Walmart parking lot because you can't afford a hotel for the extra days you're on the road traveling 20 hours.
Later, we talk about what it was like to produce his first one-hour special, Casual Sext.
It was just a really cool event, and I knew going into it was going to be a lot of work, but it was also exciting at the same time because it was something that we had never done before, and that, I think that's when it's the most fun, when you're so new at it you don't really know how it's going to end up. You're just kind of going into a blind, like, well, I hope this works.
Enjoy the conversation. Well, Michael, welcome to the Lancast.
Yes, it's good to be here, man.
You are a full-time comedian, traveling all over the place, and that is a job that you hear a lot about and nothing about at the same time. So I'm really curious as to what the lifestyle's like and how maybe you got into it.
It sounds a lot glamorous than it really is. You think, because the comedian lifestyle that you're exposed to is the tour buses and the sold out arenas, and and you see him hosting the VMAs and all that stuff, and that's about 1% of the actual job there. It's usually you're sleeping in your car in a Walmart parking lot because you can't afford a hotel for the extra days you're on the road traveling 20 hours. I've had many of those nights back in the day when I was driving cross country, and it is a different. It's one step up from truck driver, pretty much. It's semi truck driver with dick jokes. That's pretty much how I describe the comedian lifestyle. A lot of fast food and Motel 8s.
Well, how did you break into it? I'm sure it's kind of. I've heard it's very difficult to get your footing.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was an option growing up. It was. I grew up watching, Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and Sinbad and all of those guys, and you see them on TV and you see them on late night television and Saturday Night Live, and you see them in all these different avenues, but you don't really know how they got there or what they did or who they, you know what I mean? You just see them and you're like, oh, well, that looks cool. I'd like to do that. But there's no actual pamphlet. Your guidance counselor in high school doesn't go, oh, you want to be a comedian? Okay, here's what you need to do. There's nobody like that. So it's definitely one of those, it's a self-made industry. And so I was 19 and my buddy was 18 and he just graduated from high school, or he was graduating that year and I graduated the year before, and he told me he's going up to the Funny Bone, and I was like, why? We weren't even old enough to get in. Like, what are you going to do? And he said he's going to do stand-up comedy, and it blew my mind. And I was like, you got to get me on. And so they made an agreement with us that if we didn't stick around to drink or we didn't cause any trouble, we could come in and do some time on stage. And so we bought a little camera from the thrift store, and we recorded every night after he got out of school. We would go to his place and we would record our little 5-minute set, and then watch it, and then record it, and watch it, and record it, and watch it, take notes. And finally we were ready, and 2 weeks went by, and we went up there and did our 5 minutes. Ended up being a contest, and I took home second place. He took home third place, our first time on stage. And we just kind of bit the bug, and we just kept going back, and they just kept letting us in kind of under the radar, just sneaking us in as long as we didn't drink or cause any trouble. We got to do jokes.
Wow. Sounds like a great
cool
opportunity.
Yeah, it was amazing, man. It was a great club too. I mean, we started at the Funny Bone in Columbus, Ohio, which is like the mecca of Midwest comedy. That's where it's Dave Stroop's room, and Dave is huge person in the comedy community. He puts together bookings for 14, I think it's 14 or 15 Funny Bones and improvs across the nation. So to have that be your starting point was the gift and the curse. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like, wow, this is a great connection. But you also forget that they saw me when I was 19 and didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So, the gift and the curse is what it was, but it turned out great, and I work a lot of the Funny Bones today, and they're just, and those are the A rooms in the country. I mean, those are the best ones to get into. So it was a blessing.
When did you realize that this was more than just you and your buddy fooling around to something that you'd wanted to pursue as a career?
I would say after improv, we got introduced to the world of improv. We used to. There was a group in town called Midwest Comedy Tool and Die, MCTD, and it was founded by Michael Loftus, who moved on to be a writer for the George Lopez show. He just put out a 1-hour Comedy Central Presents. He's writing on the new Charlie Sheen show, but he was originally from Columbus, Ohio, and he had this improv group, and he met up with guys like George Kaliotis and Jay Hendren and Dan Swartout and all these guys that had Second City backgrounds from Chicago, and they used to actually teach there, and so they formed this improv group, and they were touring all over the place, and then they kind of split up into a smaller group, and that group was very active in Columbus, and they picked up my buddy and I when we were in comedy maybe two and a half, maybe 3 years at the very most, and they approached us to do improv, and I was like, I'm not interested in that. I don't do that. I do stand up. I was completely against it, and they trained us and they worked with us, and we did workshops almost like 3 times a week, and then we started doing colleges and clubs and bar shows with them, and we, next thing we know, we're headlining Funny Bones and with these guys, and it was, I mean, we were thrown right into the mix, and it was sink or swim, and we got to do that, and we started making a little bit of money, and our schedule started to fill up a little bit, and that's when we kind of knew that we couldn't keep working a day job and keep up the lifestyle of a touring comic. It was great, and because for a while you would balance them both. You would be, you get up and you go to work from 8 to 4 or 5 o'clock. Sometimes you'd try to get off a little early, and then I would drive 3 or 4 hours to go showcase for a club to do like 10 minutes. You do 5 or 7 minutes, sometimes 10 if you're lucky, and then you wait on future work. And so it got to the point where that was overlapping the schedule, because then you'd have to drive back home. You get home at 2, 3 in the morning. And then you have to be at work you have to get up at 7 to be at work by 8. And it just got to the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore. It's got to be one or the other.
Right. Well, going back to what you said about traveling and sleeping in your car and basically living a trucker's life for comedy, I can imagine that would be slightly draining, both emotionally, physically. How did you keep yourself motivated during those times?
Because the high that you get from being on stage and that rush and that anxiety and all that stuff that comes with performing, it takes over. It takes over your it takes over reasonable and conscious decisions. It works just like a drug, where you're like, I have to have it, and I don't care what it costs. And so you miss out on birthday parties and anniversaries and dates and whatever else, because you have to fill that void. You have to have that rush again. And so you go seeking for it. And if it means you get 2 hours of sleep the night before, then that's what it means. If it means you get to sleep in your car, then that's what it means. But the trade-in is that you get to do a show in front of 300 people in Iowa that you didn't see before that night. It's a complete room of strangers. It's a blank slate. It's a completely different rush every time you're on stage, and that trumps all of the other stuff, I guess. It sounds weird, but unless you've been on stage, you really can't explain it. I think it works just like any other addiction, though. where you just you get it in your life, and then you have to have it at a constant value, or else you lose that rush.
That's an interesting point of view. I haven't heard of it referred to as an addiction before. But,
well, for me at least, that's what it is. I don't know about other guys. Maybe it's just a hobby for other guys. But I know if I go 2 or 3 days without being on stage, I start getting itchy.
Yeah.
There's definitely a mood change and all that stuff, and so yeah, it's definitely an addiction.
How did your family and friends and basically your personal life have to adjust to this new addiction in your life?
Well, luckily I've been blessed with a very supportive system in my life. My mom and stepdad have made it out to any show that's within a 50-mile radius or 100-mile radius. Sometimes they've driven. They still live in Ohio, so they've driven to Indiana and Michigan and all over the place to come see a show. I have a great girlfriend that allows me to she's not one of these people that gets angry about me being home for 2 days or even 1 day or even no days week. Be like, sorry, I just did Florida 2 weeks in a row, and it wasn't an issue at all. I'm very blessed with that. I know a lot of relationships they struggle with that tension of even if a guy wants to go on a fishing weekend, it's trouble in paradise, So it's good to have that balance of support system where they understand that this is what I do, this is the path I've chosen, and they've just been supportive, and they've gotten out of their way when I'm able to be in the area, or when I'm able to bend my schedule a little bit. They try to go out of their way and bend their schedule a little bit, and we kind of meet in the middle. Maybe I'll stay an extra day when I'm in Ohio, or maybe I'll drive a couple extra hours to meet them for dinner or lunch or something like that, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, they're really, really supportive. I just lucked out.
Well, having been in the business for quite some time now, if you had a chance to give yourself any advice for when you were starting, or if you met a starting up comic, what kind of things would you say to them to encourage them?
I always try to tell the upcoming comics to just be patient, and it takes time. We all are a victim of when you first start out, you think you have 3 hours of material, and you deserve a Showtime special within the first 6 months you're doing comedy. And that's not the case, and it takes time, and you need to slow down and really take the opportunities as they come to you. I'm not saying don't create opportunities. That's not my message, because in this day and age, that's all you really can do is create the opportunities, because no one's going to come searching for you. But at the same time, just know that if a door is not open right now, there's a reason that door is not open. You know what I mean? That door will open up when it's supposed to. And just take your time and slow down and really, really practice on your craft, and really get your focus on before you start complaining and bitching and trying to move on or giving up. Really give it some time. Nothing happens overnight, especially in this business. There is no corporate ladder. There is no X equals Y if this happens and blah, blah, blah. It's a complete random toss-up. And you just have to acknowledge that going into it.
Sounds like sound advice to me. Who is your biggest influence comically into what you produce and perform? And how do you keep yourself from emulating that too much?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I grew up on a lot of mixed comedic influences. Very physical guys like Sinbad and Steve Martin were very huge influences to me growing up. I remember I would imitate Sinbad all the time, because he had those facial tics and those real quick remarks, and he was just really good at that. And Steve Martin, of course, was the very bizarre and out of his mind kind of person. So growing up, it was definitely those two. And Eddie Murphy, I would love to do, because he did his characters, and his character work was just flawless on stage. So I really studied that growing up. And then as I got older, I got into Bill Hicks. He was a little bit more of the voice that I was that I latched onto, and I really wish I wrote more like Hicks or like a Bill Burr in that kind of vein. But so you take all those entities and you mix them together, because that's I feel like it's the same way with music. If you grow up listening to jazz and whatever, you're probably going to end up playing jazz, And I think that's the way I turned out. I grew up listening to these guys that did a lot of character work, that were very physical, that whatever, and that's what I bring to stage. Is without emulating them, I have a good mixture of. I've been told that several times, where they'll say, "Wow, you're like a mix of 5 different comics in one," or whatever, and I think that's just from me carrying that through the years of studying all that character work and that loose improv on stage and that that very bold movements and stuff. I think I've carried through that and really developed that in my own voice on stage.
Well, before we go to break, I have a question from the audience.
Yeah.
And Quinn Baker had wrote in, and she said, in your opinion, what's the best joke ever told?
Oh, God. That is a tough one. There's so many jokes that come to mind. I assume it's probably the street joke that they're searching for. You hear a lot of that's the pet peeve in comedy is everybody wants to tell you a joke or tell you something that you can use. I think this is the only career where somebody comes up to you afterwards. You can crush, you can murder the room, and somebody comes up and goes, "Here's something you can use." You would never do that. If you went to see, Bruce Springsteen tomorrow, the man's a legend. You wouldn't go up and be like, "Hey, have you thought about playing this?" You would never do that. I think there's 2 different kinds. There's the obviously really funny street joke, and then there's like the comic street joke that everybody enjoys. I'll do the general very funny my favorite street joke. It's a little dirty, but fuck it. There's a man and woman. They're married. They've been married forever, and they on their 10th anniversary, he says to her, "Listen, I love you with all my heart. You're the one for me. I never had any second guesses. And this year for the anniversary, I just really, really would like a blowjob." She goes, "Oh my God, that is disgusting. Oh my God, no, that is gross. That's disgusting. No." He goes, okay, that's fine. So 20 years go by, right? He gets, it's their anniversary again. He goes, we've been together 20 long years. It's been beautiful. I couldn't imagine spending this time with anybody else. This year for our anniversary, I really would just like a blowjob. Oh God, I told you, you're never gonna. That's disgusting. I will not do that. I will not do that. Okay, all right, okay. 50 years go by, and he tells her, "Listen, it's been 50 years. We've been through so much together. I obviously I love you with all my heart. There is nobody else. We have beautiful children together. We built this life. I really just 50 years. I just really want a blowjob." She goes, "Okay, you know what? You're right. You've waited 50 long years. I'll give you a blowjob." So she does. The next morning, the phone rings. And he goes, "Hello? Hold on a second. Hey, cocksucker, the phone's for you." That was probably my favorite street joke of all time.
Well, there you have it. All right, we're going to head to break. When we come back, we'll have more with Michael.
Excellent.
Hey everybody, we're here at Penn Cinema to find out what everyone's been talking about. Excuse me, why do you choose Penn Cinema?
I like the seats. They're really comfy. They're a lot nicer than most other places. This is my house.
Oh, well, this place is great. I mean, it's popcorn. Got some. We got a slushy machine over there. We got 3 claps. 3 claps for the Lidditz, the Lancaster, and the F for the time, just in case you don't know what time it is in your area. That's why I love this place. They think about everybody. Very friendly.
Has a nicer environment.
It's clean and comfortable.
It feels independent. It doesn't feel like part of a system. Like, it feels like as big as it is and as polished as it is, that it feels independent,
Bigger screen, better quality.
So it's really close. It's very clean. We come here all the time.
What do you like about Penn Cinema?
The seats are my favorite thing. Very comfortable. On the rump.
3D IMAX, the whole shebang.
It has a down-home feel, and we love the atmosphere that Penn has created. He really tries to take into account what people want in a theater.
It's really clean, and the seats are really comfy.
Yeah, I like the seats. It's the best movie theater to come to.
Well, you've heard what they have to say. Now come see for yourself. Check out Penn Cinema for first-class movies in a first-rate theater. Located at 541 Airport Road in Lidditz, PA. And we're back on the Lancast with comedian Michael Malone.
Yes.
Michael, you just released your first one-hour special called Casual Sext. When did you get in your mind that you were ready to produce something like this?
Well, we talked about earlier the patience and timing that come with this career and all that stuff, and I'm a very motivated individual when it comes to that. I feel like I've always been one step ahead of the game, or at least try to be, as far as marketing and all that stuff goes. And I'm definitely a self-producer and. For a long time now, and I've built websites and other marketing avenues and stuff. And we had released my debut album, Let's Get Physical, through a record company, and we had great success over that. It got all the way up to number 3 in the nation and number 8 worldwide on iTunes as a bestseller. So we were really excited about that, and I wanted to stay on that heat. Because I know a lot of guys, once they have like a certain amount of heat or buzz around their name, they just let it die down, and it's not really their fault, or they maybe just don't know what the next step is or whatever. But I wanted to capitalize on it, so we went ahead, and I was already working on a different hour, and so we rented out a theater that I had been to before with Operation Comedy, which is a great foundation. We help out with the Wounded Warrior Project. So we've been to that theater. We had a great connection with them. I really liked working with them. And so we came to them with the idea of recording a one-hour special there. And they were, of course, they were beyond excited, and they were beyond helpful. They were just amazing with us. And so we worked with them, and we packed the house. And we actually had to add 3 chairs. So we sold it out enough that we actually had to add a few seats in the house. And we brought in a camera crew out of Cleveland, and we shot it there in Shelbyville, Indiana, there at the Strand Theater. We had everything hooked up there, and it was just a great turnout, and they were so nice to us, and it was just a really cool event. And I knew going into it was going to be a lot of work, but it was also exciting at the same time, because it was something that we had never done before, and that, I think that's when it's the most fun, when you're so new at it, you don't really know how it's going to end up. You're just kind of going into a blind, like, well, I hope this works. And so it did, and we had great success with it, and we just launched it last week. So it was a lot of work, and it paid off, and we're very, very, very excited about it. So,
did you do all new material from your album?
Yeah, we did. It was all new. There's about 10 to 12 minutes of carryover from Let's Get Physical, but it was the jokes that I kept hearing the most about. Vampire Mom was very popular. My cat's joke was very popular, and there was another one. The three or four jokes that we kept were very, very physical. So you heard them on the CD, but you'd never seen them be brought to life. So it was, even though you've heard the joke on a CD or you might have whatever, you've never seen it. And so I was comfortable enough with leaving those on the new hour, because it was breathing new light into that joke, because it was, again, it was never visual, it was only audio. So I felt good about it.
That brings up an interesting angle to your stand-up. It's not just jokes, it's also physical comedy. So it's almost like writing a play when you do something like this. In a way.
Yeah. I've never heard it put that elegantly. I usually hear, you're jumping around like a monkey up there. Never heard a play, but that's beautiful. Yeah, and that's something that I learned through improv, too. When I was doing improv for a while there, the number one thing they teach you is to take a suggestion and times it by 10. Make everything bigger than life on stage. And so that's what I started to apply to my stand-up, and that's when I really noticed a turn. I mean, it was once I started doing that, everything started clicking, and that's when I started getting people's attention and really started getting a buzz around. Because I had the joke writing background. I could write a joke and I could present a joke, I really was missing that connectivity of actually presenting material. A lot of guys just stand up and they just stand in front of a microphone and they tell you a story. Or I try at least to give you a full-on high energy show, because I feel like you paid the money, you got dressed up, you came out, you had some food, you got some drinks in you. I feel like I'd be ripping you off if I just sat there and told you a story. If I sat down on the stool or whatever, like, that's boring. I want to perform for you. I want to give you a show. I want to give you an experience that you go home and you go, you have to see this guy or whatever.
So when writing the jokes for Casual Sext, were you thinking about what kind of onstage performance would go with each one as you wrote them, or did you write them and then figure that out later?
No, after, because I write in a different way. I usually write a lot on stage. Like, I'll come up with a premise or an idea, and then I'll take it right to stage and try to develop it. So that's the way I work through my material. So when I was doing Let's Get Physical, I already had that pattern down of being able to take an idea, take it to stage, act it out, and figure out where to go, what faces to do, and all that stuff. And so when I was doing Casual Sext, I already had that formula down where I would take a premise or an idea, take it to stage, figure out how to tell it, and then go from there, and then tweak it as we went along. And I actually wrote Casual Sext in little chunks of these jokes, and they were strong, and they were like a little dirty, and so I felt like I was almost scared of the material when I first started doing it, because I wasn't a dirty comic, and it's not that it's like filthy, but it is dirtier material. I mean, it's called Casual Sext, So that was the idea. When I had a bunch of this material, about 15 minutes into the material, I was like, I have these jokes, they're a little dirtier, but they are just, they're crushing on stage. And I was like, what if I just built an hour of this kind of dirtier set, or this more risque, if you will, material, and then we slap a title on it like Casual Sext, and that way we advertise as kind of being more risque, and we just do an hour of this kind of riskier material, and then the next hour will be, cleaner or whatever, and blah blah blah, and we'll focus on that later. And that's exactly what we did. I wrote the hour. It's more risque than I'm used to doing on stage. I've been known to be very playful and kind of innocent, and a lot of jokes about family and past relationships and stuff like that, where this this hour covers obviously sexting, and I have a couple personal stories about getting caught in the moment, and about being with my first black chick, and all that stuff, and the ping pong ball trick that you might have seen, and all that stuff. So there's stuff like that that's in the hour that is really funny, but a little more risque than what my audience was used to. So it was definitely fun to develop, but also the entire time it was like, I'm not used to this. But it was fun. It was cool.
Did you find that you had to create a new stage persona to be able to perform that much dirty work?
No. It was still, I still kept it high energy and silly. Even with the opening joke about sexting, you can see I'm all over the place. I'm bending over the stool, my legs over my head. There's all kind of craziness going on. So I'm still remaining very physical and very silly. It's just the material was a little riskier than the other album. And as far as I'm in the process now for the next hour. We're working on that. I'm trying to change my tone a little bit, and it's not going to be as silly. It's going to be more in like a frustrated tone, but I'm still going to try and remain the physicality and all that stuff. So I'm trying to go a different direction in the future, but for this one, it still remains pretty silly and pretty physical for this hour as well.
The Michael Malone on stage and the Michael Malone in person, what is the big difference? Is there something that you turn off and on when you go on stage that it's you, but it's not the normal you your close people know? What's the thing that gets tweaked?
Energy, and that's what I'm trying to change. in the upcoming hour is to be more of that voice that I am in day-to-day life. I tend to get worked up over stuff that really doesn't matter, like the real little things in life. I'm more of a smartass in real life than I am on stage. On stage, again, I try to take things in times by 10 and be bigger than life and really be in the moment. I mix a lot of crowd work in with my material, so it gives everybody kind of an experience and makes every show different. So even if you come out twice that week, you're not going to see the same show. So I try to maintain that on stage, where in real life I'm low key, but I'm very sarcastic with an anger undertone to it. And so that's what I'm really trying to develop now, is to try and find that balance of not sounding too angry, like almost like a Bill Burr. Like, I don't want to sound like him, but definitely frustrated. And so that's what we're trying to do now, is trying to bring my real voice into the stage instead of being so over the top.
Now, I picked up on something that I think is interesting here. You had a really successful album, and you just launched your first hour special, and you're already working on your second hour special. Is the video specials the way to go rather than albums? Is that like the future of purchasing comedy, I should say?
I feel like Louis C.K. really changed the game. I mean, there's certain guys that come along that just hit the reset button. I mean, say what you will, Dane Cook really hit the reset button a few years ago with social media. I mean, he made it possible for us to be able to reach out to fans in a way we had no idea was possible. And now Louis C.K. comes along and he's hit the reset button. He said, you know what? You don't need Comedy Central. You don't need Showtime. You don't need the industry so much. If your fans want your product, they will get your product. They will find a way to have it. And so you just have to find a way to get it to them. And I feel like a lot of guys that have that's the way it is turning. I mean, Jim Gaffigan just did it. Ron White just did it. Aziz Ansari just did it. They're all releasing specials for $5 downloads. Bill Burr just did it on his website. So it seems to be that's the way to go. It's no more of this wait in line. It's no more wait and see. It is, here's my product. I know you want it. I want to give it to you so you can share it with your friends and our fan base can grow. So here it is. Here it is. And it takes out that corporate, not only that corporate dollar that balks up the price so much, but it also, I feel like it makes it so much better to actually be able to deliver a quality product for a low price to somebody that actually gives a fuck. I mean, if you put your special up on Comedy Central or Showtime or HBO or Stars or whatever, that's still like a great thing to have. But at the same time, nobody's really watching TV anymore. Everything is so instant and everything is online that nobody sits around and watches, Showtime for hours and hours and hours on end like they used to. It's not as big of a deal. So you have real fans that are looking for real content. Give it to them. Here it is. You want a 1 hour special? You like my comedy? It's $5. It's less than you spent on Starbucks this morning. Here it is. Take it. So I feel like that is the wave of the future, just because of that relationship that it builds with your fan base. I feel like it really takes out a middleman and connects you one-on-one with them, which is great, which is what we're all after. I mean, that's why we do it every night. We're up there connecting with people every night, and this is just a new way to do it.
Well, speaking of connecting with your audience, along with performing live and producing these specials, you also do a podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love doing the podcast. It was something that I kept hearing about. For years, I've been told that I have a radio voice and all this other stuff, and you're like, what are you talking about? But it's one of those things where it's been a lot of fun because I get to. I always joke around. I say that I do the opposite of Marc Maron. he comes on and he has guys that you've been watching your entire life. You know, he has Robin Williams on, and he has, you know, this guy and this guy on. I bring the guys that you should know on the show. The guy, you know, not only do I do comedians, but I also do bands and music because I love music. And so I combine those two passions in my life and put them on the podcast. And it's not every episode is a gut buster. That's the thing a lot of people need to know going into it. It's not like, hey, this is the Michael Malone laugh hour. We're going to have fun. It's almost like a serious interview. I try to get these guys and see what makes them tick and see what inspires them. And also what I do is kind of different than most podcasts is I showcase what they're actually working on and what they're doing. So if I have a comedian come on, I will play clips from his album, about 3 to 5 clips per episode of their actual album. And so not only do you get to hear the interview and get to hear like what they're discussing and what they're talking about and what makes them, you know, write and all that stuff, but you also get to hear their actual product. So you actually get to know like, hey, this guy is really funny, and now I get to know where he's from, what he's about, what he's up to, what he's working on. You know, and the same with music. I have him play live on the podcast, an acoustic set. So not only do you get to hear an interview about how the band came together or what they're working on, but also I play, you know, 4 or 5 live acoustic songs right there that you're not going to hear anywhere else. You know, I mean, it really is exclusive content. It's right there, you know, in the studio with us. So it's really cool. I really love doing it.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. If people want to learn more about you, your podcast, Casual Sext, or your album, where can they go to find all that information?
Everything is at malonecomedy.com. That is, you can find all my tour dates are up there. My video, you can download my 1-hour special Casual Sext for $5 right there on malonecomedy.com. You can follow me on Twitter at malonecomedy, and you can search on iTunes for The Michael Malone Show. It's my podcast.
Great. Well, once again, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
We hope you've been enjoying the Lancast.
This episode was produced by myself, David Moulton, with show notes by Keith and Lauren Slusser.
All pertinent links to this episode can be found in the show notes at thelancast.com.
If you specifically liked this episode, we ask that you consider making a donation.
Every little bit helps. Even $1 a show can keep us going.
If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by going to thelancast.com/donate.
And don't forget to subscribe in iTunes and tell a friend about the show.
So, for the Lancast, I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Keith Slusser.
Asking, are you in the cast?